That is the cutest slate ever. Take one. I never thought I'd be making a whole video about tape, but here we are. I put together the most commonly used tapes as a camera assistant. Other departments use this as well. I'm not saying they don't, but I only know camera department and I'm not going to talk on behalf of others. I've also ranked them in terms of most used to least used, but we'll get through that now. And we're going to start with Gaffer tape, which is the most used option. It is an absolute must for your camera kit. Very, very important thing to have. It's just a really strong adhesive tape. Used for a lot of things, mostly just securing one item to another like most tapes are. And it also works fairly well on fabric. Now I will mention, don't buy the cheap stuff. This is the cheap stuff. I'm going to show you a close-up difference between the good stuff and the cheap stuff so you can really see the quality, but really just invest your money and buy the good stuff. You're going to have a lot less headaches if you do. The cheap Gaff is just not as adhesive as the good Gaff is. It's also got really poor adhesive structure, so it does leave residue quite easily, even though it's not as strong, and it doesn't rip cleanly. I know that's a weird thing to not be happy about, but it doesn't rip cleanly. Trust me, when you try them both out, you'll know what I mean. And the sun's changing again. Great. One thing I do want to touch on here is Gaff should never be used on a surface, regardless of if it's the good stuff or the bad stuff. It should never be used on a surface that can damage easily or anything that heats up easily as well, because the residue is more likely to be left behind on that sort of surface. Also, I mean, if it's damaged easily, like painted awnings, painted walls, polished floorboards, you can damage those things using high adhesive tapes like this, so just don't do it. The next most common tape is camera tape. These are only 2 colors here, but you can get much, much more. And the reason why you can get more is it's mostly used for actors' marks. Now, I will mention again that it's very similar to Gaffer tape in a way that it is less adhesive than Gaffer tape. It has different uses, but it still can damage, so you've got to be really careful using it. It's always best to just check with locations about whether you can use tape on a certain set or whether you shouldn't, or just use general common sense to work that out yourself. It's always best to have a large range of colors as well, because I mean, you can't just have 2. If you've got 2 actors, sure, but if you've got more than 2, you might want more. You can also use it for labels, for cords, for filter tags, for quickly neatening up cables as well. And when you're using it for labels, it's important to note that the surface of it is quite glossy, so you will need a good quality permanent marker to mark on it. In saying that as well, it does wear off quite easily because it is glossy. It's not going to stay there forever, so it's not a permanent solution for a label. Now with Fluorotape or Permacell, you can do that. You can write on it and it will stay on there because the surface of it is matte. It's a cloth-based tape, so it's a bit easier to have a more permanent writing on a label. Again, it's used for the same stuff. It comes in many, many, many different colors. You can use it for actors' marks, you can use it for labels, you can use it for marking up which camera is what, A camera, B camera, C camera. It also comes in 1-inch and 2-inch tapes. These are obviously the 1-inch tapes, and then you can use that for different purposes if you need larger labels. This one is also less adhesive, kind of. There's not much difference between them, but it can still leave damage, like I've said with the other tapes, so you gotta be really careful when using it still. But in my experience, I definitely think it's less adhesive or less likely to cause damage compared to camera tape at least. Now we're going to talk about paper tapes, not to be confused with matte Gaff tape. This is matte black tape. It's effectively photographer's masking tape, or in other words, just very expensive masking tape. But it does also come in different colors. You can get white tape like a regular masking tape. You can also get different colors like blue, green, yellow. Those sort of tapes are used more for marks in houses where you do have polished floorboards and you can't afford to create any damage using any other tape. It is also worth checking with locations for that one as well, because you might not be able to use tapes at all. Again, common sense and check with people. I don't have the colored versions with me, but with this matte black tape, most of its usage is on makeshift mats for matte boxes. So if you don't have any mats for the inserts in your matte box and you're getting flare, you can use this to cut the flare, and it can quite safely be used on accessories like that. You can also use it to make accessories too. So if you're working, let's just say, on a long form production and you've got a monitor that needs a hood designed for it, you can use core flute to make the hood, and then you can soften the edges of it using this tape. I'd also say you can really use this for taping down cables. Again, you got to use common sense, but I feel like it's the least destructive of the lot, although it is rather expensive. So I would say that it's a better idea to just purchase a couple of rubber mats or get rubber mats from locations to cover your leads so that you don't cause tripping hazards on set. So it's basically Gaff, but with less damage, and it's more expensive. Now, one that I don't have here is electrical tape. That's one that is used quite minimally on set. You tend to use it for fixing up cables that may need to be repaired later, but you need a temporary fix. You can use it to strap cables together to make them a bit neater so that you can use them for return cables, or to just neaten up cables that are already existing on the camera so they don't get in the way. And another thing you could use it for is wrapping up terminals too. So if you're working in a location that is quite dusty, dirty, sandy, whatever, and you're not using a particular end to a cable, you don't want it to get sand, grit, dirt, whatever in it, you can wrap it up using electrical tape. And just quickly before we wrap up as well, I am going to do something that's not quite film related in my descriptions from now on. I've been thinking about it for a long time about what I want to do with my platform, and I do want to include things that are interesting or that are important. And that may come in the form of something to do with social justice. That may come in the form of something that maybe just interests me and I think it might interest you as well. Some sort of news story, something like that, that might prompt you to learn something new. And today's one is going to be about pretty much what I'm wearing today. It's Clothing the Gap. Clothing the Gap is a company based in Melbourne. They're an Indigenous owned brand, an Aboriginal owned brand, and their main advocacy is for freeing the flag. In case some of you don't know, because I know a lot of you are from overseas, you're not from Australia. The Indigenous people, the Aboriginal people in Australia cannot use their own flag without paying rights to a private company. There's a lot more information than that, and I'm going to leave a link down below so you can read up on it and you can hear about it, and maybe you can support Clothing the Gap as well. In fact, today there's actually court hearings and court proceedings happening about working out a way to make the flag free. So there you go, that is a selection of tapes that camera assistants use every day. Now it does just come with saying that you will learn the best situations to use these tapes as you go. Anyway, I hope you learned something today. I hope you enjoyed that video, and I'll see you next time.